Our next guest spends her days as a copy and screenwriter in the sexy world of software, and by night completes as many creative projects as her therapist will allow. When she isn't cranking out jams with her new indie punk band, Billionaire Fight Club, available wherever you can stream tunes, she is working on her short comedy film and getting ready to publish her book of comedy essays, which you're lucky to get a preview of shortly. Please welcome comedy writer, filmmaker, and punk singer from the mean streets of the South Burbs, Katie Pecho.
Just get situated. I'm going to be doing this set sitting down because I'm a disabled baddie. 80, hey! Yeah. Let's do a little live blitz. Hi everyone. The following essays happened exactly as described, of which, I'm not proud. This essay is called A Devil Walks Among Us. I am what could be called a bug lady. At present, I have 2 tarantulas named Juno and Circle Pit, who adorn my coffee table, which my guests love. Plus, if I ever invite a guy over and he starts being weird, I can just tell him I have 10 more tarantulas, they're just free range. You still want to insist you can't use condoms now? Jeff, I know that you're lying, and so do the spiders. In case you were starting to panic, this is going to be a critter-heavy 9 minutes, but I don't have any tech, it's all just words, no pictures, and if it helps, the bugs are the protagonists. My firstborn was a jumping spider named Lilith, followed by a praying mantis named DJ Macaroni, because his hands like Gullibus. Who have since both ascended into the buggy beyond. DJ Mac, one of my favorite little fellas, lived a long and happy life of 1 year from his enclosure aptly named Subterrarium, where he spun tunes from a paper-crafted DJ booth, complete with an itty-bitty vodka Red Bull, which I handmade because I am insane. Do you guys know that I'm single? Is it just bottle rocketing off of me right now? In fact, it was I who selected the thematically named venue for tonight's show for a little home field advantage. Yes, welcome to my Bughouse. What can I say? I have a thing for vermin. This also explains my ex-boyfriends. The less glamorous part of arthropod husbandry, if you can even believe that there is one, is dealing with my children's food. Spiders and mantids only eat live prey, which includes things like flightless fruit flies for the smaller bugs and crickets for the tarantulas. I will admit that handling the feeders took some getting used to, as, I will be frank with you, they are fucking gross. Fruit fly cultures smell, if I may paint a picture, like the underside of a hockey player unfamiliar with deodorant. Undershirt, let's try that again, that's even worse. The undershirt of a hockey player unfamiliar with deodorant that was left in a damn gym bag for a decade and then passed through a Doberman. But the crickets, those slippery, wily little bastards, I have to grab in what my doctors have clinically diagnosed as bumbling oaf hands, like some more evil version of Toy Story's The Claw, and then chuck them headlong to their doom into the tarantula's terrariums. It makes me feel like a psychopath. I am the malevolent deity of their legends. Another learning curve I had to surmount that ascended a graver and more precipitous incline was how many crickets to buy at a time. It took a bit of cross-city travel to get to the cricket store, and I didn't want to have to make the trip more than necessary. So when I first got Juno, who was my only tarantula until I bought Circle Pit a week ago and had to edit this line in, I thought I would play on the safe side and just get a shit ton of crickets to save me the hassle. What could go wrong? Why are you laughing? Pause for suspense. I mentioned the bumbling oaf hands. There were 2 critical elements that I did not anticipate. 1. Juno is not a particularly hungry bug. In fact, she only requires about 2 crickets a week. You can see, given the aforementioned shit ton, how that would lead to a surplus. 2. The thing about crickets is that as time passes, they mature. They do this, like all arthropods, by molting their exoskeleton and emerging larger and in charger. Now the other thing about crickets is that once they reach a certain point of maturity, well, you see, that's when they find their voice. They grow big, and strong, and they get a hankering to fuck, and they pursue that by screaming their horny little legs off. All day, all night, every moment of every hour. At dawn, during work meetings, when I was trying to read or sleep or fuck someone myself, or just hang out peacefully in my own goddamn home, bellowing into the mocking skies above like the exhaust pipe of a man whose father never hugged him. Unceasing, unrelenting, infuriating, like the telltale heart, but worse because it happened to me. I'm not proud to admit this, but I lost my cool. The unyielding cacophony drove me into a frenzy only seen in Victorian women locked by their tyrannical husbands in attics plastered with arsenic wallpaper. I broke, I cracked, I snapped, I went cuckoo bananas. I lost my place on the page. They wouldn't shut up. They wouldn't stop. And the last dam of patience and restraint that had been creaking at its seams broke in me one morning, and I leapt up from my desk, snatched the cricket terrarium into my quaking mitts, and danced, frantic and crazed, out the back door. To really set the scene, I was heavily unshowered. My hair greasy with the bedraggled torpor of an employee playing fast and loose with the assumption of a load-bearing cameras off. 2. I was dressed in my most ragged, cry-for-help t-shirt and sweats that exude, Auntie Kate's gonna stay with us for a while she gets back on her feet. And 3, I was boiling over with unfettered rage. I tore down the back staircase and out to the alley. I dropped hard behind the dumpster into a crouch that would make Gollum say, "You single? I can have 2 precious." Shoulders stooped and knees akimbo. Like more than this. I ripped the lid off the terrarium, poised to liberate myself from my waking hell, when all of a sudden, I heard a gasp. I looked up and around the dumpster. Just a short distance across the street, there stood motionless a woman and her dog. I watched her stop dead in her tracks, jolting the dog back on its leash as she froze. Her mouth hung open in shock and disgust. I maintained my filthy habits' position, gazing up at her through oily tendrils of tangled hair smeared over my bulging eyes, knees splayed up to my ear like a toad possessed, hands curled to my face in desperate, sinister plotting. I think my shirt was emo in nature, if that adds any color. We held each other's gaze for a long, silent, vibrating moment. She did not move on down the street. She didn't move at all. Even the dog seemed to be watching me, unsure of what was happening, but knowing in his bones that it was evil. She was too far away to see what I was abandoning. All she could tell was that this grimy, frothing gargoyle was skittering around behind the dumpsters in broad daylight, chucking out a terrarium. For all she knew, I could be damning an innocent turtle or gecko or hamster to certain oblivion. There's only 3 pages, so I don't have to do so much again. Like a real sicko. You can see, right? Living unchecked among them. Perpetrating the unconscionable cruelty of airbutting some gerbil into the unforgivable wastelands of Lincoln Square. This used to be a neighborhood. Undeterred, or perhaps having long ago surpassed my threshold for perturbation, and maintaining eye contact for some reason, I tipped over the terrarium. The few remaining crickets that had not, at this point, Lord of the Flies each other, scattered off into freedom. I reached my hand in and scooped out a lingerer, flinging him with his brethren in obstinate defiance. All the while, the woman was holding my gaze. She never moved. She scarcely breathed. She wanted me to know that she knew. Slowly, I replaced the lid on the terrarium. Slowly, I returned to human heights. Slowly, I turned and walked back to the gate, relieved of my grueling torment, my most hideous burden, feeling lighter and freer and safe once again. The woman never moved. The dog never moved. I imagine they watched until long after I was gone, cursed souls like those who catch an unwitting glimpse of the Mothman in a nearby wood. knowing an irreparable rift in fate had been sundered and life would never return to the way it was again. She knew what I did last summer. I heaved the gate open and locked it behind me, leaving her aghast on the sidewalk. And then I shuffled up the stairs into the glimmering peace of a home finally quiet after all of the world and all its stars had broken their throats with howling. Silence so pervasive, so conspicuous in its contrast to the caterwaul that came before. I sat down at my desk to take up my work again. Life, as they say, does go on. And I reminded myself to unfollow the Lincoln Square Neighborhood Facebook group. I prefer to remain the stuff of legends.